Today's episode is sponsored by Opus, in theaters March 14th. From A24, Iowa Debris stars in Opus as a young writer invited to the secluded compound of a legendary pop star, played by John Malkovich. When she arrives, she finds herself surrounded by his devoted followers and a pack of intoxicated journalists, and caught in the middle of his twisted plan. There's no cult like celebrity. Experience Opus in theaters everywhere, March 14th. Get tickets now.
This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video March 27th.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
You have to control yourself!
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking the Vibatron. We're talking Monkey See, Monkey Do, and we're talking Alice in Wonderland references. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking I Want to Cut Your Pussy Open?
Oh my god, Trace.
Okay, so I panicked. I actually had the Vibatron, and I was going to say the clit-destroyer, and then I was like, oh my god, wait, I didn't have a second backup thing, so wait.
I mean, the clit-destroyer is kind of amusing.
But it is the Vibatron! Oh my god, no one's going to think I want to talk about slashing pussies. Anyway, hi everyone. Welcome to Horror Queers. We are, I know, in case you couldn't tell, which maybe you wouldn't be able to based on what we just said, but we are discussing 2018's Cam, a gem to come out of the 2010s.
Indeed, yes. And what a perfect film for our second week of Doppelgängers and Deception. I didn't even think about comparing this to Black Swan, which is, of course, the film we talked about last week. And yet this feels like a spiritual companion.
Oh, Joe, I hope you didn't look at my cheat sheet because Black Swan was a direct influence on this movie.
I did not, but I'm happy I'm on the same wavelength.
Yes, Black Swan and Whiplash, by the way, are the two main influences on this movie.
Oh, okay. I can see it. Yeah.
I'll have more to say about that. But before we go any further, let's invite our guest who's waiting in the wings. Because, Joe, it's been a while, I feel like, since we've had a guest on this show.
Yeah, and a while since we've had a female identifying guest as well.
Oh my god, so all you people waiting, here it is. Everyone, she is the author of Millennial Nasties, which takes a critical but appreciative look at an oft-ignored subset of horror cinema, the 2000s. You may also recognize her voice from her many appearances on the Pod and the Pendulum podcast, which covers every horror movie in every franchise you can think of. Please welcome Ariel Powers-Schaub.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Yes,
Hello.
welcome. Thank you for coming to discuss this movie.
Oh, I'm so excited to get into this one. I feel like this movie doesn't get talked about enough, so I'm glad you guys are doing it.
I feel like it did when it came out, but it's the Netflix curse.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm waiting for a deluxe version of this, like, Hush Got, because I feel like, yeah, you're right, Ariel. It came out on Netflix, and then it just got buried, and every once in a while people remember, oh yeah, that's a really fucking good movie we should be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ariel, do you have, like, a history with this movie? Do you remember the first time you saw it?
Yeah, I remember watching it shortly after it came out because I heard it mentioned, I think, on the Evolution of Horror podcast. Get a lot of good recs there, of course.
Yeah.
And so I just heard positive things about it, and I threw it on one day, and I didn't really know what to expect, and I loved it immediately. So, yeah, I'm really excited to get to talk about it.
Amazing.
Joe, what about you? Was this a festival watch for you?
Oh gosh, I don't think I can remember when I first saw it. I think it would have just been when it dropped on Netflix, but I remember in the lead up that Isa Mazzei, the writer, was doing a lot of press because, you know, it's not every day that you get a cam girl writing a movie about a cam girl. So I think people were trying to draw comparisons between her and Diablo Cody, and that was piquing my interest.
You actually are correct, because I for my production history, I pulled a lot from really just interviews with Mazzei.
Okay.
And people do bring up Diablo Cody, and, you know, she compares herself to her a lot, but then, you know, someone's like, well, she was quote unquote just a stripper, whereas you were actually like a sex worker, so like your stuff could be actually out there. I know the intent was positive, but like it was basically one of those things where it's like, well, no one's going to find videos of Diablo Cody stripping. They are going to find videos of you on the internet, like doing porn.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Trace, what about you? Where did you first encounter this?
For some reason, I thought this had a longer festival run. I think I saw this at Fantastic Fest, but this pretty much, like, it did the festivals. I think it premiered at Fantasia in the summer of 2018 before hitting Netflix that November. So it was only like a 5-month festival run.
Okay, that's not bad.
Okay, well, I think we're going to have like a lot to talk about this movie, because one thing I just appreciate about it, outside of the fact that it's a good horror movie, is that it's just very authentic. Like, I just really like the portrayal of sex work in this film. I think I like it more than the actual, like, horror stuff going on in this movie. But, okay, so here we go. I'm pulling, again, all of this from interviews with Mazzei. So one of these is called A Former Webcam Model Writes a Horror Movie Based on Her Experiences for Hyperallergic. And then the other one is Cam Rewrites the Script for Sex Workers in Horror for Paper Magazine. So yeah, so Cam was directed by Daniel Goldhaber and written by Mazzei. And again, like I said, I'm pulling all this from interviews with Mazzei because, interestingly enough, like, she had tons of interviews. There weren't as many interviews with Goldhaber on this film.
No, to the point where I think when you and I were looking at the schedule, you were like, so she's the writer and director. And I was like, no, she collaborates. She frequently works with Goldhaber. And you were like, wait, who?
Yeah.
Like, you barely even recognized him. And I think in part it's because he often stayed quiet because this is more Mazzei's story.
Absolutely. And to the point where, so, like, you know, because they did both collaborate on 2022's How to Blow Up a Pipeline. Goldhaber directed that one, but Mazzei was, quote unquote, just a producer on that. So, of course, he has more interviews for that film. But
right. By the way, shout out to that fucking movie. That was my favorite film of 2022, and it is criminally slept on.
I've never even heard of it.
Oh, it's really good.
Yeah, I only saw it. Truthfully, I told Joe this. I got an FYC screener for it for 2022, but it was not anywhere near the top of my to watch list until Joe said, no, it is good. And it is good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's environmental activism, but it's also queer as fuck. You're going to recognize 90% of the cast immediately, and it is an incredibly tense thriller.
Yeah.
Okay, it's on the watch list.
But Mazzei and Goldhaber are also collaborating on their next project, the remake of Faces of Death, which has been in the can for a year and still doesn't have a release date, which worries me. But
so frustrating.
Yeah. But okay, so as we said, though, Mazzei was herself a sex worker, and she drew on her own experiences as a cam girl when writing the script for Cam. And when she was a sex worker, she would tell people, you know, that she met, that she was in porn, and they would always look at her and say things like, but you're so normal, or do you really need money that bad, or wait, you went to college, you're too smart to be doing this.
Wow.
Yes.
Folks, you're going to hear us make that sound a lot, I feel like, just because I mean, I think that's one of the other reasons, as you said, Ariel, to talk about this film is because it's just really frank in its depiction of sex work. And I love that. Like, I love that it is pushing that conversation to the forefront.
Well, it's normalizing it.
Yeah, because it's work. It's called sex. And then there's a work attached to it. And as we very clearly see demonstrated in this film, you have to be really fucking good at your job to make it work.
Like, halt the production, because I think that all the time. Like, I feel like people, when they look at, like, OnlyFans, like, models, and they're like, oh my god, like, that's so easy, it's so lazy. And I'm like, look.
No.
If I could make, thousands of dollars just jacking off on OnlyFans, like, every day, whatever. But it is the thought and the work that goes into, like, the production of these things. It's... I can't even imagine. Like, I don't want my sex to become work. Like, I want my sex to be fun.
And throughout the movie, the women are talking to each other the way coworkers talk to each other. They're like, oh, yeah, I worked this many hours this week, and we should work on this project together. And what do you think about this? And it's just so normalized as work. It's really refreshing to see, even though I'm also kind of like, damn, they have to work so hard.
Oh, my God. It seems exhausting.
Yes.
When that one girl says she's camming for 70 hours and still like didn't like move up a rank at all, I was like, what? Why?
Yeah. I could never.
Why? The dedication. So anyway, even some of Mazzei's viewers, though, would say things like that to her, or they would try to save her from the thing they were consuming, which Mazzei notes is entirely problematic.
And hypocritical.
So it was really important for Mazzei to show Alice, the protagonist in the film, as a sex worker that you're not going to expect. So, like, yes, she has a nice house and she makes a good living, but at the end of the day, she's living in a small town. She's still hanging out with her family. She's still doing kind of unconventional shows. She's engaging with the psychology of her viewers and seeing how far they'll go.
Right. She shops at the Dollar Tree.
Oh my God, I know. Now, the general idea that Mazzei started with was to create a film where an audience would empathize with a sex worker. And from there, she had to figure out, well, how do I make an audience sympathize with a sex worker?
Oh my God. Which I hate that we even have to start at that conversation, because it should just be like, well, they're people and they're doing a job. Like, that's baseline. I don't think it should be that hard to empathize with.
But we're also talking about a genre, and of course this is not exclusive to horror, but a genre that frequently, like, kills off sex workers that are not characters in the movie.
True. And we're talking about puritanical North America as well.
Yes, exactly. Getting more puritanical by the day. So, also notable, though, this was all before she even knew it was going to be a genre film. So, at the end of the day, her goal is, I want to make a movie that's going to make the audience empathize with a sex worker. And I think she succeeds at that.
I would agree. Absolutely. I don't know how you don't love Alice.
I know.
She's so great. The casting doesn't hurt, but character-wise, great.
And so originally, though, like, she thought about doing a documentary, but she liked that with horror, you can talk about the subversive topics, and it's also a genre people love, so, like, it's guaranteed viewers. And in her words, she thought it would be the perfect medium, because when you're in a thriller or a horror, you're so immersed in the thrill of it that sometimes you aren't immediately thinking about the politics behind it. And so she thinks that by getting an audience inside Alice's head and having them root for Alice, they're empathizing with a sex worker in a way that's actually pretty subversive. So, for the back row, horror is political.
I was going to say, didn't you guys hear? It's not. I heard on the internet recently, it's actually not. So.
The cycles, the horror news cycle, it's like every 6 months we get horror is not political.
Horror's dead, but now
horror's
it's back.
Dead.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
Exactly.
Yes.
Same old, folks.
So, okay. The other thing is this. Mazzei says the horror in this film comes from the fact that Alice loses her agency. And it's only scary if you recognize that in the first 30 minutes of the film, that Alice does have agency and control, which is often not a characterization that we get to give sex workers in a lot of films.
Right. Because they're typically not even leads.
No. They're typically just a body.
Yeah. Or someone to protect.
Yes. Yeah. Or a hooker with a heart of gold. That old trope.
Wow. That too.
Yeah. So it was important to Mazzei that nothing bad happens to Alice because of her choice to engage in sex work. So the story is told entirely from Alice's perspective. She is never positioned as a tragic victim or an invulnerable femme fatale. She has control over her work and her world. So when she loses it to a cyber foe, this deep fake maybe of herself, we can talk about it. The film doesn't unravel into a cautionary tale, but rather reveals itself as a story about a woman's terrifying, triumphant battle for her agency.
This is so funny, Trace. Like, we are in the midst of preparing this month's audio commentary, which is on Sin City. It's just like the polar opposite of everything that we're talking about there.
But I do love it. I do love Sin City.
Oh, it's great for what it is, but
but it's not this.
But Jessica Alba has no agency in that movie.
Right. Yeah.
And also, old man Bruce Willis really wants to fuck her.
Oh, God, yeah.
I do like that movie, though. But go listen to the Patreon, everyone. So as I said, though, the two films she looked at most when conceptualizing what she wanted to do with Alice was Whiplash and Black Swan, as both of those movies have protagonists who are obsessive and ambitious about what they're doing, who throw themselves into self-sacrifice for their art. And in those films, I debated this. So she says, in those films, the audience never questions why they do this. We just understand. Even when Miles Teller's hands are literally bleeding in Whiplash, we're still like, yes, keep pushing. And I thought, are we? Are we saying keep pushing?
I would argue that part of the narrative of all of these stories is at what point does the obsession take over your life to the point of self-harm?
Yes. I think especially in Black Swan. I mean, I don't question why the protagonist is doing what they're doing because it's clearly they're that ambitious. But I'm not necessarily saying, yeah, good for you. You should do that.
No, you're almost like, oh, God, maybe stop. Maybe take a breather.
Yeah. But one thing, and Joe, you'll love this, she also looked at a lot of Cronenberg and how he never uses body horror gratuitously because she says the body horror is always connected to a theme or a character. So when violence happens in Cam, she wanted to make sure that it was always tied in some way to the theme and was necessary, and it's not just there to quote unquote look cool.
Yeah, which is interesting because I do remember at the time that the quote-unquote hardcore horror fans felt like, oh, well, this is barely a horror film because there's virtually no blood or violence until, the climactic showdown between Alice and Lola. And I just thought, I really disagree with your semantics.
Like, that's just implying that if a movie is not gory or violent, then it's not a horror film. So,
yeah. Then it's a thriller, I guess. And a thriller can't be a horror film. These are the other debates that we have every 6 months. And I hate this one.
I hate it too.
It's boring. Like, I'm so bored sometimes with this genre. I'm sorry, the societal thoughts and views on this genre. But
I think just say then, if it's easier for you, don't say horror, just say it's a genre text because that's an even larger umbrella that we can fit a bunch of shit into.
Well, all of that being said, Mazzei wanted to make this movie scary, and to her, the most terrifying part for Alice is watching this person that looks exactly like her, that's not her, run away with something she cares about. Like, honestly, this is a horror movie for influencers.
Yeah, it's about identity theft.
Yeah. And this all comes from the literal anxiety that Mazzei had while she was camming. So asking questions like, well, where does she end and where does her persona begin? Do her online friends like her or do they just like the persona that she's created? And here's the other thing. Mazzei did consider her viewers her genuine friends. So what did that even mean when they were interacting with what was just this version of her instead of actually her? And that's the kind of questions she wanted to put into Cam to make it scary. And these are real life questions.
Yeah, Ariel, I'm curious because you're an author, you're a podcaster, you're a film critic. Do you suffer these kinds of anxieties? Like, I know Trace and I have talked at length about it, where it's just like, are we still being ourselves or are we starting to put on performances? And we always try to pull back from the latter because it's not authentic, it's not real, and it's exhausting if you find yourself falling into it.
Yeah, it's something I've thought about for sure. I feel like I haven't fallen into it too much because I'm honestly just not on social media enough to get sucked in. But I have thought about things like when I go to film festivals and somebody meets me and they want to talk to me, I'm like, what are they expecting? You know? And am I going to disappoint them with whatever I am? And should I care about that? So it is something I have thought about. Yeah, I don't think I'm famous enough to really have parasocial relationships, which I'm good with. I don't want that, but it's hard when everything is so curated. Like, I won't post a picture without making sure everything about it is perfect. And there's some part of that I know isn't good deep down.
Yeah, that's like a compulsion, I feel like. But that's also not an uncommon compulsion among anyone today.
Because you understand that implicitly people are looking at it and it's a reflection of you, even if sometimes you feel like, oh, well, I have to doctor a part of it. I think sometimes we also doctor it a little bit to protect ourselves. It's when you start to say, oh, look at how aspirational I am. Like I'm talking about a true crime case where there's a woman who presents herself as a wellness person, but she's actually lying about having cancer. And you're just like, okay, well, that's a whole different level. Like, I don't think most people are trying to scam or lie their way into friendships, endorsements, and so on.
Well, but Ariel, I'm glad that you mentioned, like what are people expecting from me? Film festivals are a great example too. Yes. And truthfully, I don't share similar concerns, but I've definitely had experiences where I've met someone that I've only known online, and they're definitely different than like the how I view them. It never really bothers me. I never feel quote unquote disappointed, to use your word. I do feel bothered when it's someone who's a very loud asshole online, and then I meet them in person, and they're like this meek, shy, like don't want to like talk to anybody type person because that's just how they are. So like their internet persona is this loud id version of themselves, and it annoys me to no end.
That's interesting. Do you feel the same way if it's the reverse, Trace?
No, not at all.
So if they're loud in person but quiet online, you're kind of like, oh, interesting. But if it's...
Okay, so this is maybe not going to sound fair, but to me, I'm like, okay, so you aren't ballsy enough to be that loud in person, but you are online because you're blocked by the internet. So I have a lack of respect for that. Whereas if you are quiet online, but you're loud in person, then it's like, yeah, sure, like whatever. Like it's not really the same thought process I have. Like it's more so like, hey, maybe you're holding yourself back or being a little reserved online, but you're not necessarily like lying about who you are. But for someone who is, generally speaking, a loud asshole online, I expect them to be that way in person. If they're not, then I think they're a coward.
Oh, interesting.
I'm with you, actually. You talked me into it just now. I like that.
So everyone, all you loud assholes out there, be that. If you ever meet me in person, be that way in person. Otherwise, I'm going to be real mad.
That's the takeaway.
If nothing else, I feel like the time for everybody to just be a little bit louder and a little bit more assertive about what they believe in, not a bad time to be that person.
Yeah. Yes. But okay, so back to Cam, though. So one other thing that she wanted to build fear around was this very real experience of having Mazzei's shows pirated and stripped of all identifying information about her and then re-uploaded all over the internet without her consent. So to have work that for her was her career, her passion, and her art labeled with things like frizzy-haired hottie and put on Pornhub was this disembodied experience of watching herself that was in no way tied to her anymore.
Oh, God. I remember reading those kinds of quotes and thinking about porn, especially like sex work and porn, whether we want to say that they're synonymous with each other. That to me feels like one of those most pirated, most sort of like we'll just strip people of any kind of identity and just upload it in clips even, or like we'll reshape it, like cut out the narrative and so on. And in a way, it's so dehumanizing.
And there's a moment in Cam where I can't remember if it's Alice or if it's one of her friends who points out that the website they're working for owns all their footage.
Yeah.
And that's super scary. Like I get it, like apps own our data and that, but that's super scary. Like they can just take that and do whatever they want with it.
Don't they also say that they take like 50% of their profits?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I thought that was really high, but maybe it's common. I'm assuming it's
high.
Common. Yeah. But so, okay, on that note, though, it was a deliberate decision for Mazzei to put her name on the script because it wasn't at first. She knew that sex workers often have a hard time finding work after they leave the business because people know what they did.
Right.
So she was very aware that the second her name was out there publicly with this movie, that would be who she was forever. But she saw a post by someone named Jacques the Stripper. Do y'all know this? I don't know if they're like a nationwide famous person, but Jacques the Stripper said, "No one will ever let you forget that you were a stripper, but why would you want to?"
Oh, love that.
Yeah.
And Mazzei really held on to that because she's really proud of what she did, saying, and I quote, "Camming was the best thing I could have done at that time, and it is such an incredibly transformative and fulfilling experience for me. I'm really grateful for it." So she acknowledges that she had a lot of privilege, though, where she was in a place where she was safe enough to be able to stand in front of everybody and say, hey, I'm a cam girl.
And it's also coming after the fact that she's not doing this anymore. So she can kind of look back on it. And I don't want to say she's romanticizing it or doing, rose-colored, rose-tinted glasses. There we go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that this film does make very clear is how it's hard to live in the real world when your entire life is virtual and involving sex work, because people just not only have ideas about you, but then you have to go out and engage with them in all of their fucking judgments.
Mm-hmm. So that's the creative side. But how about getting a movie like this financed?
Right. Who wants to give it money?
Well, and so interestingly enough, so she says it was difficult to find the right partners, but they got lucky with, wouldn't you know it, Blumhouse. And I know we shit on Blumhouse a lot lately, but there was a time, everyone, when they were making good movies. And but
it's true.
I screened Insidious at my draft house this week for Terror Tuesday, and I was like, yeah, look, like this and Paranormal Activity and Sinister like made Blumhouse who they are. Like, see, they make good movies at one point.
Still bangers.
But interestingly enough, they came on to cam because they had just finished Get Out, and they knew there was a demand for these socio-political genre films, and they got excited about it.
So Blumhouse, go back to that era.
Yeah, exactly. And Blumhouse then put them in touch with Divide and Conquer and their producer Adam Hendricks, who understood the vision and all the politics behind the film. So they were lucky in that everyone they got on here was fully supportive of the vision and understood the vision.
Right.
So they had the support, and they didn't run into too many issues until they got to casting. Now, I love this. Mazzei says that casting was really hard, especially the lead, the role of Alice, because usually when you cast a film, you send the script out to agencies, and agents send it out to their clients. And so Mazzei and Goldhaber sent the script out and would hear back from agencies that anyone they showed it to had passed.
Yeah, which means it never got to any actors.
So Mazzei and Goldhaber were at a party once, or they'd be at some kind of event. This happens multiple times. And they would meet an actress that they had sent the script to, and they would say, oh, hey, this is our movie, and talk to her about it. And she would say, oh, that sounds really cool. I wish I had been sent the script. And they would say, oh, we did send you the script.
Oh, no.
So, Joe, you're spot on. These agents were not even sending the scripts out to their clients. They were too scared to send it out.
Of course, yeah.
So when they realized they were going to have to do it on their own, they began the search for Alice. And again, I just looked at this happenstance. Like, it was Goldhaber's dad, a physicist, who actually found Madeline Brewer.
What?
So Mazzei and Goldhaber worked a lot at Goldhaber's parents' house. And his dad came over in the room one day and was like, oh, we found your lead. I just watched her in a Black Mirror episode. Her name is Madeline Brewer.
So wild.
And bear in mind, this is before The Handmaid's Tale had even started. So, like, she wasn't even, I mean, she's not a name, I would argue, but, like, she was not known at all.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. It seems like she had a couple of independent films. She had a film that, Trace, we can cover at some point in the future on this podcast called Braid.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Oh, I've never heard of this.
Oh my God, you guys. You're going to love it. It's so good.
It's so hallucinogenic. I was like, whoa, I'm going to have to sit with this for a couple of moments.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at it now. Okay, yeah. Absolutely open to that. So they reached out to Brewer. They sent her the script, and after she read it, they met. Mazzei was impressed to see that Brewer had an annotated binder breaking down when she's which version of herself, because remember, she's playing 4 versions of herself and is on screen literally the entire film.
Yeah. It is a commanding lead performance.
Mm-hmm. So she had all these lists of cam girls, some that Mazzei had sent her, but also others that she watched and wanted to take inspiration from. But Mazzei was already impressed, but it was what Brewer said next that basically sold her on the part. And what Brewer said was that she would feel honored to play a sex worker.
Okay.
That's awesome.
There we go.
Mm-hmm. For filming, they decided to build a live site that they would be able to puppet. So Oh, and again, just like the work here. Mazzei scripted all of the cam shows, 98 pages of chats with commenters having their own personalities, their own backstories, their own jokes. And they had that site running live for Brewer so that she would be responding live to these messages and her eye lines would be right. So when Brewer is laughing and joking and thanking people and talking to these guys, some of those lines are scripted, but a lot of them are improvised. And she also didn't get to read through any of the chats before they queued them up. So she was actively engaging with them.
Oh my God. And you're delivering a performance and reciting your lines and making sure that you're doing all the technical aspects. Like that is a wild amount of work.
Yeah, that is impressive.
Well, that's so much more than just writing a script too for Mazzei. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I'm sure it was fun, but it's still work.
Yeah, I wonder how much she pulled from her own videos where she said, okay, well, I did a balloon drop when I hit a milestone. You know, I did one with spanking. I did this and that. Like, I imagine for her it was easier than having to do research if you hadn't done any cam girling at all. Like, I did read a funny story about Daniel Goldhaber trying to do a cam show, and apparently he couldn't get anyone to even give him any tips.
Aw.
But I'm actually curious, though, because for male cam people...
I feel like it's going to be a little different.
Well, I guess I just say, are there a lot of male cam models geared towards women?
Here's the thing. I don't actually know. I didn't look into it. You know, I was thinking, what is my experience with this kind of stuff? And I think the closest I ever got was like chat roulette. And that's not even something where you're tipping other people. You're just stumbling onto people doing sex work occasionally.
That was a wild time.
The wildest. It was like, hey, do you maybe want to see a dick or a cute dog? Because you could get both.
Well, I guess, so Ariel, like, do you know if there are male cam models? Because I mean, I guess...
I actually don't know.
Because when I think of male cam models, I think of male cam models. And I've never paid for cam models. Oh, God. Well, that's fine. I'm not under the age anymore. But, like, I definitely was, like, on cam sites when I was, like, 16, 17. Because I was just trying to figure myself out. So I would like go into cam rooms, but I couldn't do a private room because I didn't have a card, but I was still there just watching men in underwear.
Maybe boys. We don't know. It's the internet.
But the relationship between Brewer and Mazzei was very collaborative. So whenever, like one example they have is Brewer was unsure how to spank herself. And so Mazzei would step in and show her how to do it because she's like, well, you know, most people, they don't think about like, oh, how do I spank myself for the camera? But that's something that every cam person has to know how to do.
Of course. You got to know your angles.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. I hadn't considered.
It's a lot of the things where it's like, oh yeah, I mean, like you might do this in like the privacy of your own home, but when you have an audience, like it's a little bit different.
Oh my God. I'm just imagining everybody being like, how would I do it? Let me just set up my computer cam and film myself giving, you know, a couple of lashes.
Listeners, everybody try it.
Well, Ariel, speaking of like, you know, wanting to make sure the picture is perfect, what if you had to do these videos of like your naked body, you know?
Yeah, I think I would just go insane worrying about it. Honestly, I can't post a picture of my nails if they're not perfect. So camming is like, it's so impressive to me that you can just do that.
And I'm glad you said impressive because I want to keep saying that to just for everyone because I am just so impressed by, again, the work that goes into some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But so since the role of Alice would require nudity, they included a nudity rider in the contract for legal reasons. But it was up to Brewer on how naked she wanted to be on a scene-by-scene basis. And so she would say things like, oh, today I think Alice should be more nude than she's written. Or actually, today she's less nude than she is written to be. And so this helped Mazzei to make sure that none of the nudity was coming from an objectifying or gratuitous place. It was always tied to the character's psychology and where Alice was at that point in the story. Which... it was interesting because I actually remembered there being very little nudity from Brewer in this film, so I was shocked. It's front-loaded. Like, we're not getting a lot of bottom footage, I feel like, from her, but we do see her breasts a lot in the first half of this film.
Yeah, which I didn't remember either. Like, the whole stuff on the Vibatron, I remember very clearly getting a sense of what she was doing, but I remember thinking, oh, we're not seeing anything. And when we see her breasts, it was a surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. But so Cam has its world premiere at the Fantasia Film Festival on July 18th, 2018, and it gets to Netflix on November 16th of that same year. Since it's a Netflix release, I don't have any box office information, but reviews were very positive. We're looking at a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes with an average score of 7.1 out of 10. But Letterboxd users have given this a 2.9 out of 5 or a 5.8 out of 10. Yeah, I was really confused by that. But maybe
not
that's
even cracking 3? Come on,
no,
Letterboxd.
not at all. Maybe that's what Ariel was saying though, where she's like, some people are saying, "Oh, that's not a horror movie."
Well, and people. So I was reading through Letterboxd reviews. People are really mad that the mystery isn't explained.
Oh my God, who cares?
Okay. Well, okay.
I can see it, but also, who cares?
So, and it's like, Alice doesn't get to know, so why should we?
Okay. I have a quote on that I was going to say for the end, but since we've brought it up now, I'll just say it now so we can get it out of the way. So
let us have it.
Mazzei on the ambiguity of the ending of this film. So she says, there are so many things on the internet that we don't know how they work. We don't know how the Facebook algorithm works, but we just kind of accept it and we interact with it and we interface with it. And there's something very terrifying in that. And I think that for Alice, she doesn't ultimately need all the answers. She just needs to know how to get her shit back.
Yep.
And I didn't want to distract from Alice's journey by giving away too much and delving into too much of this backstory of Lola. So it was really intentional to give the audience enough of a clue that they can figure it out for themselves, but not dive into it too much and be distracting. And then she adds, another thing that came out while our film was in post-production was deepfakes. Deepfakes essentially software that you can use to put anyone's face in anyone else's body. So it's terrifying because it looks real and it is real. So that's the age we're living in. That's where our technology has gotten us. And so in a way, that's how Lola is. She is something that now actually already exists, and we have to figure out how to grapple with that. And I guess I do remember being a little frustrated on the first viewing that we don't get an answer or an explanation for this, but any subsequent viewing I've had have kind of been like, it's not the point. Like, who cares? And also, like, is it going to be satisfying if you tell me there's a cabal of underground dark web people that do this to sex workers? No, it's who cares.
Yeah, like we can talk about particular scenes where it maybe comes to the forefront of the narrative, and if that in and of itself is frustrating, like I didn't mean to shut anybody down. If that is your main qualm with this film, I get it. I just, for me, that is not the most interesting part of this film.
Well, I also think it's enough to bump it down to 3 stars or 2.5 stars.
Well, exactly.
Just me.
I also think that people are mad that there isn't more porn in their sex worker horror movie.
Really?
Which, though, I do think this movie is very, sexy.
I agree. So I don't know what people are mad about.
Okay, well, I was going to bring this up. I guess I was waiting for some kind of initial intro. Yes, thank you. Because, Trace, you and I did a guest episode on Girl House, which hopefully will come out in the near future. But I was thinking about that movie when I was watching this, because that movie has even less nudity in it. And yet there's it's all about a cam girl house, and there's a serial killer who goes in. But I mean, I think that this struck me as more authentic than that film.
Well, and I think also because it is a man, I believe, writing and directing Girl House, which, by the way, everyone, we're not coming down on Girl House. I actually would recommend Girl House.
Absolutely.
But yes, I think that Cam is more successful at it. But at the same time, though, as we discussed in that Girl House guest appearance, it is a lot more progressive than you think it would be for a movie about cam girls written and directed by a dude.
Clorox Sentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Sentiva. Now available in Clorox Sentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Good night, itchy eyes. Good night, sudden sneeze. Good night to your symptoms of allergies. Xyzal is the allergy medicine you take before bed. It provides powerful relief while you rest your head. Not just all night, but all the next day. Xyzal keeps working, keeping allergies at bay. And without those annoying symptoms disturbing your rest, you can wake up the next morning feeling your absolute best. Remember, be wise all, take Xyzal. At night.
But, okay, well, what happens in this movie?
Okay, so we open on cam girl Alice. So I'm going to say Alice when we are seeing the regular human being, and then Lola is the entity, doppelganger, lookalike, so on, just to keep it kind of straight as we move along.
Okay.
But yes, played by Madeline Brewer, and she is interacting with her fans in her Free Girls Live room, and she's doing so under the pseudonym of Lola. And this is a fantastic way to open this movie because it's exciting, it's sensorial overload, but we're also really getting an idea of all of the different things that Alice has to balance. So as you said, Trace, she's filming herself, but she's also watching herself on the big screen, but she's also interacting with all these guys and making sure that they're tipping her. And it's a whole fucking production.
Yes, I will say though, if I can get like thousands of dollars just for eating a piece of steak off of a fork, that would be. I would actually. I could do food porn, right? Like that. Maybe I'll do that.
Go for it. Give it a try.
Wasn't there like a sitting on cake thing that was a big deal for a while? Here's the thing: I don't think all of these things would work for a gay context. To be clear, I think that this is horny straight dudes and women. I could be wrong.
Fuck. No, I know. I have to do the research.
Or we could just keep making a podcast that pays us. It's maybe less work. Maybe.
Hey, if we ever put out an OnlyFans, like the Horror Quiz OnlyFans, we would make so much money.
It's going to be a no for me.
Oh, I know. I absolutely know it's a no, but I can already hear like the money coming in, like the cash register cha-chings.
I believe you're referring to tokens because we don't use cash.
That's true.
Okay, so we have shots of omniscient camera as we're watching, but also, yes, this chat interface as she's getting tipped tokens. And we are also seeing her keeping track of the ladder of top girls. So in this sequence alone, we see her go from 65 to 60, but then things get a little weird and a little dark when visitor 003128 demands to see her cut herself with a knife, and this causes chaos within the chat until she actually produces a knife and ultimately slits her own throat.
This was very confronting the first time I saw this movie.
Yes.
I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
I also just love that the movie is this upfront about like the sadism porn.
Yes.
These guys are really enjoying this.
They turn on her so quickly. It starts out with like, oh, this guy's creepy. Let me help you ban him.
Right.
I can help you block him. And then as soon as she pulls the knife out and she's like, do you really want to see it? They're like, okay, I guess.
Yep.
Let's get weird. So quickly they turn on her.
Which, this was new to me, where I was kind of like, when I think of like violence in porn, like that just feels very like underground to me.
No, Trace.
Come
on.
I know.
Take that pause, because think about how often we see rape fantasies. Think of how often it's home intruders coming in and so on. So to me, this was an immediate logical step to take, especially sexualized violence against women. For sex workers? You already talked about it.
I know. I guess I just don't view that type of porn. Is there a lot of like rape porn and gay porn? I'm not going to ask.
Yes.
There is. I know. I knew the answer before I finished the question.
I think it's that it's not where our minds naturally go, because I don't personally think, oh, wow, violence and sex, they go together. And yet media constantly forces them together.
I think, and I'm interested in, like, 'cause I think I'm always wary whenever I'm looking for porn, like, of the type of porn that I'm watching. Like, I don't want to watch something that's too violent, like, for obvious reasons, but also I don't even want to experiment with it because there's this fear that, like, if I watch it and I watch it enough, then that's going to be, like, the only thing that gets me off. Like, it's like that extremity
It's your new
thing.
kink. Yeah.
Yes, and I don't want that to be the case.
Yeah. Well, I think, Ariel, what you have indicated is like that shift from 0 to 100 in terms of, oh, it's a knife. And all of a sudden, yeah, everybody's on board. I think that that's just how quickly things can escalate, especially when it does come to pleasures and maybe a little bit of perversity and so on.
Yeah. And they're all egging each other on. You know, they don't need to pretend in front of each other because these are online. These guys have online personas as well.
Well,
and so and no pictures at all for them, right? They're always like icons and emojis and sort of thing.
Well, but it's also because it seems like their own community, because I don't know how many guys are like in this group, but like we're kind of talking to a lot of the same ones. And so when the girls are also pitting their viewers against each other, it's mostly the same guys. Like the guys that are watching Lola are also watching Princess or Baby or, you know, whoever.
Yeah, it's interesting. I tried to keep track of the people in the room count because obviously they go up quite a bit when Lola takes over. In these early scenes, we're talking about 300 to 500 people. But yeah, the number of crossover, like people are very aware of what's happening in other people's feeds. But it makes me think that it's like, oh, if you're watching a particular kind of girl, you're probably aware if she's done a collab with one of the other girls, if she's in the cam girl house, because they all seem to like run into each other's feeds. And then also we're keeping an eye on people who are in and around the top 50. So I imagine there's probably thousands of people who are watching these streams, but they're not paying attention to the top girls. They might be watching, you know, girl 2000 or like what number does Eve Bot turn in when she activates her account? I think she's in like
1600 something.
Jesus.
But yeah, I agree. I do think that there is a community of guys, and Isa Mazzei said that she knew these people. Like, these were regulars. You were probably spending most every night with these guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she said she considered them friends.
Exactly. And then they egg you on, and you fake a death by suicide for the camera. But hey, it bumps you up 5 spots. Yay! Cue the title card. All right, so in the aftermath, we watch Alice as she cleans up the fake blood. Like, this, to me, it's all work. She's still working because she's got to set prep the bedroom for the next day. Like, this is a room that she doesn't even use except for camming. It's like an office.
Yeah.
So by this point, she has actually climbed to 53. We watch her celebrate this on the calendar. So she is clocking the work. She is keeping track of her themes so that she doesn't repeat them too often. And also she wants to know how quickly she is rising through the ranks.
So important. So her writing suicide in the calendar for to mark the theme for the day. So this is, again, a very intentional choice by Mazzei. She says, that's another reason why I show her calendar and her writing down how many tokens or tips she gets, which night, what type of show you're going to do. Because that's what it's like when you're a cam girl. You're thinking, okay, what nights am I going to do? Which type of show? How many viewers am I going to get if I do this and this? And it's really calculated. And again, there is a misconception that if you just take off your clothes, you'll make a bunch of money. And that's not what it's like at all. It is a business. So it was important for me to show that type of sex worker that I don't think I've seen before. I think Alice, at the end of the day, is a girl that could very easily be your best friend. And I think that was really important to get across.
We're all at the mercy of SEO.
Well, yes.
You know, like the algorithm runs our lives.
Truly that. I also just love this idea that, you can't keep doing the same basic thing. Like there's a moment midway through the film where Alice has been locked out and she's watching, or maybe she's doing research, and then that's when she comes across Baby, and Baby is the most fucking boring performer. And we come to realize why, because, you know, the Lola equivalent to Baby has become very complacent at number 1. But we see all of these other performers and they are all up to wild things. Like when we see Princess X, who is the rival of Alice, she's doing sabotage against Alice by saying, okay, well, if you want me to take off my clothes, then you've got to drop Alice's rank. But even she is forced to resort to nudity, which is something she never does. So for her, that is a theme for the evening.
By the way, though, Princess played by Samantha Robinson, a.k.a. the Love Witch.
Oh,
shit.
Yeah, I had I didn't know that until this viewing. I was doing my cheat sheet and I was like, oh, it's a Love Witch.
Well, there you go.
Interesting. I'm on the record as not loving that director, and I love the visual aesthetic of the film, but I mean, she is one of the main reasons to watch that film because that performance is fantastic.
Love the movie, hate the turfy director. I'm sorry, just the outright transphobic director.
Yeah. Okay, so she is actually not done work. So Alice is still working even as she is cleaning up. She's posting bloody goodnight messages. She's chatting with superfan Tink, who is played by Patch Dara.
Great casting, by the way. This guy embodies this type of internet person.
He made me feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. What do we mean by that, and why does he make us uncomfortable?
I'll just say really quickly, it's when she goes to the hotel and she's like, tall, sweaty guy. I was like, yep, that's it.
Yeah. Ariel?
It's like he wants you to, he's trying too hard to make you feel comfortable instead of just being natural. He's lowering his voice to speak softly. He's choosing his words really carefully in a way, it's like a milady type of vibe.
Right.
And so the way he's trying to make her feel comfortable immediately puts me on the defensive because I'm like, what are you hiding?
Yes. Yeah, because I think, the men in this movie are a little bit caricatures, but I don't think in a bad way. I think they embody different types of men who all want something from somebody that they think, oh, well, I just have to pay you and then I can own you.
Actually, in a way, the Johns in this movie are kind of characterized the same way that sex workers are in a movie where the John would be the protagonist.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking to Tink, and he seems lovely and supportive. And of course, he reveals that he had actually created this fake account they had worked together on this routine. But then we immediately see Alice's priority shift when she gets a phone call from Barney because he is a huge tipper. As we learn, he will eventually be played by Michael Dempsey, and he compliments her on tonight's great performance. He talks about the lackadaisical nature of Princess X, who he has clearly been financially supporting, and we get in the bath and give him a bit of a show, but we're not really seeing anything here.
No.
Okay.
I think it's interesting right before she starts talking to Barney when she's talking to Tink. And she says, don't you want us to reach number 1 this year?
Yeah.
And later in the film, when she hits a higher rank, she says, you guys, we did it. It's really...
It's collaborative.
Yeah. Well, and I was feeding this parasocial relationship is what I was thinking is you need their money, so you're getting them on your side. Of course, that's what she should do.
Right.
And to make them care about her rank is the right way to, have them help push her up. But it's not really Tink who's doing anything. It's her.
No.
Well, and that's where things get murky for all sides, I think, because it's a thing where, when she sees Tink in the store, it's that is terrifying. I don't even know what I would do if I saw one of my viewers in the store clearly looking at me too. But it's a thing where it's it's shitty. It's not fair, but it's shitty because if she was to say, hey, this isn't okay, the response would be, excuse me, but you led me on. You talked to me like you were friends and blah, blah, blah. And it's you have to draw that line between, hey, that's the job, buddy.
Yeah. And I think that becomes increasingly more difficult when you're doing these kinds of performances, but also when it's all happening virtually, right? You don't even have the advantage of being able to confront someone publicly. So they just get to, I guess, project what they want or what they imagine the relationship is, because it's oh, well, I have access to you on the internet. And in this case, I have access to you every night and I'm giving you money. So don't you owe me?
Yeah.
The answer is no, by the way. No. No one owes you fucking anything.
If you have access to anyone online, that does not presume you have access to them in person.
No.
Right.
Oh,
And
God, no.
I think that's what a lot of people do presume.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So at this point, Alice is actually pretty comfortable with the nature of her relationships with these men, in part, I think, because she does have a measure of agency and control, right? Like she can cut them off. Okay, Tink, bye. I'm going to get in this bath and eat my sushi. But really, I want to talk to Barney because I want to set up a date in a week and I want to get that money. Which, you know what? She's a sex worker, but also she does it to get paid. So she's after that cash.
I love that one of her like wish list things is like a mattress.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a new sofa.
Yeah. Like, yeah, absolutely, man. Refurnish the house.
Okay, so let's meet a few more characters. The next day, we see her getting her hair done by her mother, Lynn, who is played by Melora Walters. And I'm not going to lie, this woman, if you kind of catch her out of the side of your vision, she's dead ringer for Marissa Tomei.
I could see that. Yeah, I only really know her from Big Love, the polygamy show. But yeah, I like her.
Oh, yeah. I mean, nobody really gets a ton to do. Like, this is the Madeline Brewer show, and I think that that's completely fine. But our supporting cast are good punctuation marks. Like, they come in, they do what they need to do, and then we move on.
I will say, though, I would watch an entire sequel, actually, just seeing, like, mother and daughter work on this together.
Yes.
Like, I actually really want to see how that works.
I liked her mom. You know, we talk about later, like, the things that they go through together, but her mom just seems so supportive and, like, she's trying to be. And
she's trying, yeah.
Yeah, she's really trying to mother her children.
Yeah, so this is also when we meet Alice's younger brother, Jordan, who is played by Devin Druid, and he has a 17th birthday coming up the following week. So it's interesting to see how Alice is interacting with people live, because she's dividing her attention between, yes, shopping for a new sofa, she's fielding inquiries for a date that evening, but like from a gentleman sex guest who will pay her money, and you know, she's kind of like half engaging with the real world. You can tell that her focus is on the virtual money side of her life.
Oh yeah.
This scene made me tired because I was like, this girl never gets a break. Like, she's constantly working.
Even when you're getting your hair done, that should be a time where you can just relax and let the other person work on you.
Right. But no, she has to keep engaging with these dudes to keep staying at the top of her algorithm and keep making money.
Yeah.
I do love the fact that Jordan is aware of what she does. You know, we see her go through the photo roll and pick a picture of her butt or her boobs to send this guy. But I thought for a moment, oh, okay, we're hiding this aspect of our life from everybody. So I was kind of happy to see, okay, he's younger. He's maybe a little bit more sexually open to what she's doing. And it's really just like the relationship with mom is... The timing just isn't right.
Well,
we can't tell her just yet.
I will say, my one gripe with this movie about something that I think it's unresolved is I do think the relationship with her brother Jordan, because you know, he gets to that fight with that guy who's like, you know, making like showing her porn at the birthday party, and then he kind of rebuffs her later in the film, and we never get to see them reconcile. So I thought again that was interesting, where it's like, oh, brother sister, but like he's aware, he's in the know, like supports her, like. I liked those relationships, and maybe in a non-horror version of this movie, those relationships would have been developed more.
Yeah, I read a lot into this that isn't actually on the screen. I think it's interesting that he's supportive of his sister, or he's willing to be in on the know, but when it actually affects his life, all of a sudden, then he's giving her the cold shoulder, because suddenly, oh wait, now I've been pulled into this with you.
Yeah.
Which again, I think is a
it's
discussion.
Interesting.
Well, I think it's a discussion that could have been had in this movie, but
yes, yeah.
And I was thinking about this as a sibling. Like, I'm a younger sister, and I was thinking about Alice as an older sibling talking about her professional aspirations. And even though they might not be the same as her brother's professional aspirations, I was kind of like, oh, that's an older sibling, like role modeling
Right.
Like doing better at work, getting promotions, whatever that might be in your world. I was kind of like, it's kind of sweet that she wants to talk to him about her ambitions.
Yeah. I mean, I don't envy her situation where even purchasing this new house immediately is going to be followed by a bunch of questions. Oh, well, what do you do that you make enough money to buy that? And
oh my God, I know. I think like, what is your occupation is a stupid question on any application. I feel like, no, don't ask me that.
It's rough, right? It's like, how about I tell you how much money I have, or that I'm even just going to be able to make the mortgage payments or make the rent payments and so on. Like, I know that that's naive and too trusting, but sometimes I just think the nature of questions are very intrusive. Like, do you actually need to know what this woman does? Or can she just say, I bought this new house with the job that makes me money?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So let's see. So Alice heads to the Dollar Tree so that she can buy some stuff. And this is where she bumps into Katie, who was played by Jessica Parker Kennedy. And this is another character I think I could have used a little bit more of. She's here as a bit of a contrast, right? This is what Alice could be doing if she wasn't a cam girl, working a shitty minimum wage job and then not feeling great about an average photo that gets taken of you at a birthday party.
Yeah, I mean, because the last we see of Katie, again, she like smirks when Alice is revealed, and that was the kind of thing was like, oh, I want more of that.
Yeah.
Joe, do you recognize this actress?
I did, and I couldn't figure out from what.
So she's the app operator in that movie See For Me, about the blind girl.
Yes! Folks, that's another underrated film, which we actually have a Patreon episode on.
But in keeping with the theme of this movie, she's in The Flash, the TV show a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, but she's in a really, really, really good horror comedy called Deep Murder, which is about a murder mystery that takes place inside the world of a softcore porno. And so it's like Jerry O'Connell's in it and like whatever, but like she plays, so every character in it is an archetype. Like there's a handyman character, there is a dominatrix character, and Jessica Parker Kennedy plays the babysitter.
Okay.
So it's all these porn actor archetypes in a murder mystery.
That sounds great.
It's very fun. Like it's really, really underseen. But yeah, Deep Murder, I think it's from like 2018.
Okay. So sticking around this Dollar Tree for one more final moment, this is where we notice that Tink is in the store in the flesh. And as soon as he realizes that he's been seen, he bails without a word, which I think is creepy on top of scary.
Yes, I think that's actually the worst choice he could have made, is to run away from this encounter.
Just own up, buddy. Everybody knows what's going on here, so you might as well face the music.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so back at her new house, Alice unboxes gifts on video with her cam girlfriend Fox, who is played by Flora Diaz, and she's complaining about Baby, who is #1 ranked, as well as we learn her 3 cardinal rules of cam girling. So she doesn't do public appearances, she doesn't tell the guys in her room that she loves them, and she doesn't fake her orgasms, which I think those are really hard rules to follow.
Do you know, were these, the writer, Mazzei, were those her rules or anything she took from her work?
I didn't find anything. Honestly, when I heard this line the first time, I thought we were just doing like a Pretty Woman reference.
Oh, okay.
Because her rule of Pretty Woman is she doesn't kiss in the mouth.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I could see that with the not telling guys that she loves them. To me, the faking orgasms was not a red flag, but a question mark that I had, because I just feel... You know, I'm thinking of that line, Ariel, of the cam girl who says, oh, I worked, 60 or 70 hours this week.
Mm-hmm.
That is so much time. Unless you are putting on a really good show where you can just edge your way through multiple hours, I don't know.
But women can also have multiple orgasms in a way that men cannot. So I'm not saying it's
That's
easy, but I do think it might be easier for her to give herself multiple orgasms than it is for a man to give himself multiple orgasms.
I'm just looking at lecherous comments on a message board and saying, okay, I really got to make this happen for myself if I want that token payday.
Well, I mean, admittedly, I don't have female genitalia, but like, I would imagine it's easier for a woman to get herself off than it is like it's up to her in these scenes. Like it's not a man getting her off,
Right. Yeah. She has to do it herself.
Yeah. And she knows how to get herself off.
Hopefully. Yeah.
I mean, yes.
No knives. So. No knives involved.
No knives. Just, the bears, right? The baby bear, the mama bear. And then whatever the fuck that last one is. I was like, is that the bunny? Is that what that looks like? But
it looked like the bunny on steroids, or the rabbit, I think.
Yes, the rabbit. Yeah. Thank you. That's what I was thinking of.
There you go.
Okay, so essentially, Alice is still in work mode. She's talking to Fox. How can we increase our ranks? What should we do? Should we do a collab? I don't really want to come to Girl House because that's so far away, but also maybe the Vibatron is what we need to consider. That thing just looks fucking scary. I'm not going to lie. It reminded me of scenes from Requiem for a Dream, and that movie is permanently PTSD imprinted on my brain.
It also reminded me of Requiem for a Dream, the Maid Marian scene. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, if someone tells you, oh, that thing will destroy your clit and you might lose all sensation, that's not a risk I'm willing to take.
That's a no. That's a no for me.
Yeah.
Unless you're just willing to write off sex, potentially, or enjoyable sex, pleasurable sex for the rest of your life, that is a huge risk. But I mean, this movie demonstrates that Alice is nothing if not driven by money. Like, I don't know that we truly ever see her get off sexually. Like, we don't see her with any kind of romantic interest. She is all about the business all the time.
Well, that's always something that, again, a way that I respect sex workers, like, because you have to have that line between your work sex and your personal sex. And
right.
I know it's can be difficult for partners sometimes, but for me, I'm just like, I just have such respect for them for being able to have those lines, those boundaries between their work and personal life.
Yeah, I think it's the only way that you can really exist long term, unless you are an Alice and you say, oh, well, I'm not going to fulfill a personal side of my life. I'm going to have family relations, but the rest of the time it's calendar, theme nights, getting these men to give me their tokens and so on.
Right.
Okay, so yes, we see this montage of clips of other girls, including Baby, who is played by Amani Hakim, and Alice is making plans with Barney for this date night next week. This is also when she is struggling to cut up the steak. I kind of love that she plays on stereotypes that men have, like, oh, well, what can I do to endear myself to these men? Oh, struggle to cut this steak. It's just so hard. Look at me, this weak woman.
Yes.
Like, she's playing them beautifully, and it's so satisfying.
But then the way she eats it, where she just has the whole steak on the fork, that's almost infantilized. Like, it's making a child out of her.
Yeah.
Yes. And of course, they want her to pick it up with her hands because they want her to get messy and feral and all those other sexualized things. But here's the thing. It is working because we hit 50. So stop everything so that we can pop a balloon and get some confetti. And then this is when that bitch, Princess X, ruins everything, and she steals all of our followers away.
Yeah.
This is so cringe, like in an intentional way, like in a way that I like it, but like she hits top 50 and she has a fucking confetti ball like prepared for this situation.
It's so cute.
She's so happy. And what breaks me every time, I think this is the most heartbreaking scene in the movie, is when she's watching her rank go down and she's still having to like keep up the charade. Yeah, to fake it. To be like, yo, we hit 50, but as she's going down to like 58 or something. And I'm just like, oh, God, that's so embarrassing. It's so terrible, but I get it.
Yeah. I did wonder how many computers the production went through, because whenever Alice gets frustrated at something, she slams her laptop closed. I just thought, oh, wow, she does that a lot in this movie. But this is the first time where, she fakes it. Okay, we're not going to hold it together any longer. I'm done for the night.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we do have Tink trying to call her on the phone, and he wants to apologize, and she's just like, dude, my 50 just got torpedoed by this other bitch. I don't want to hear from you right now. So we will spend a large portion of the middle section of the film dodging his calls. Mm-hmm. Rightfully so, I would argue.
Well, I will say there was a part of me that would want to be like I would want to. She does confront him eventually, but like I would want to confront this fucker right away. At least if he was calling me incessantly like this, I would be like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah.
Well, and he wants to keep it at a distance, right? Because he's clearly comfortable enough to stalk her to where she lives and where she shops, but he doesn't want to actually have a conversation that could be conflict but he clearly doesn't want to have a conversation that involves conflict. He wants the mediation of doing it through a technology. So that's why he's calling.
Mm-hmm.
So this lights a fire under Alice. Our girl does not give up. We talk to Fox. We confirm we're going to do a Cam Girl Clubhouse show. We're going to ride that fucking Vibatron. So we show up. Princess is there because she lives at the house, and we are passive-aggressively swiping at each other. The rivalry is real.
Well, because she poached Barney. I love that they use the word poach. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Yes. These men are like keepsakes or, fish that you can reel in. Okay, so then we get the Vibatron sequence. So we get a long take. The camera is tracking through various rooms and women, and then we see a topless Alice. She's got this white light, and she looks so uncomfortable, but she's trying to keep it together because, of course, part of riding the Vibatron is not just, you sit on this fucking jackhammer production. It's that people get to decide how slow or fast or how continuous it goes. And this, I imagine, is what destroys the fucking clit.
Yeah, I would want to be the one handling the joystick in this situation.
Yeah, it's like, I know it's the whole point of it, but men paying to control her actions just...
Yep.
I was like, she's choosing to do this. I know she's choosing to. And I totally support her in that. But I'm just like, this is so gross to me that men are just like, I'll give you money and you'll do exactly what I say. Like, I can't help but be creeped out by that, even though she's choosing it.
Because BDSM isn't really a topic this film engages with. But, I mean, this is kind of in that same... I mean, this is not BDSM. Well, maybe it is domination, submission. Yeah, not the bondage or sadism. But, yeah, there's control in there.
I mean, to me, this is a soft escalation of the knife sequence that opened the film, right? Where the men are excited by her. They're willing to tip her. But then, they want to control her. And they're not opposed to a kind of sexualized violence, right? Like, I don't know how you can look at Alice in this scene and think, oh, she's having a good time. It's about their good time. And you're right, Ariel. She is in control. But I think also once she starts, it's not up to her about when it stops unless she fakes an orgasm. But this does sort of get her to where she wants to go, because when she gets off it, she's number 47.
Which I say, okay, wait, you're only
That's
47
not enough.
After enduring that? Like, no, girl, you better be in the 20s at least.
Yeah, it's a very uncomfortable scene. This is the sex stuff in this film that made me the most uncomfortable.
Yeah, I agree.
So the next morning, Alice wakes up, she's recovering, she's at home in her bed, and of course, the minute she wakes up, what does she do? Like every human being, she immediately reaches for her phone and her laptop to check all of her messages and see what's going on. And hey, we're locked out of our account. And hey, we're already online.
Yeah, I love this moment. So she's watching Lola play in a kiddie pool in her office. We'll use the word office. But there's that moment where she just walks into the bedroom and there's nothing there. And it's just like, ooh.
Yeah.
So creepy.
How does this work? What the fuck? So she logically immediately thinks, oh, the channel is replaying an old show. So she starts to investigate, when did I do the kiddie pool sequence theme thing? But she can't really find it. So she calls customer support, which is voiced by Longmont Potion Castle, which is the best name I have heard in quite a long time.
My gosh.
I didn't know what this person was. They are, it's the stage name of a musician and a surrealist prank caller from Denver, Colorado, who has been active since 1986. So I guess he goes around and does shows and prank calls people in real time for the shows.
Oh my God.
Okay.
I mean, the voice is great. This is perfection. When he gets very disdainful and very confrontational later on, it was a good vocal choice.
Maybe he should have been the phone operator in The Substance.
Right?
Ooh.
It's giving that, right? You know, a hysterical white lady is calling me on the phone again. So what we learn is that they cannot help her. So she creates a new account so that she can go into Lola's room and say, hey, everybody, that's not me. Can you help me out? And she just immediately gets banned. So she creates another account. This time she calls herself Mr. Teapot. So folks, if you're tracking your Alice in Wonderland references, that's Mr. Teapot. We do have, yes, I guess, Alice is the obvious one.
Yeah.
But
movies love their Alice in Wonderland allegories. I really just don't get it, but okay.
And her previous account that got banned was Mad Hatter.
Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't mind it as much here because it feels like the narrative doesn't rely on it. If you picked it up, that's fine. And you can say, oh, I guess she's going down the rabbit hole here. And yeah, there's a bunch of doubles and stuff in Alice in Wonderland, but it's not so heavy handed that the movie is constantly being like, hey, do you get it? Alice in Wonderland? Huh?
I was going to say maybe she just has that because, you know, she's been compared to Alice in Wonderland her entire life. So I guess Ariel, are your usernames like yeah, I was going to say, are your usernames like Miss Sea Witch?
Oh my God.
Sure. Yes. Yes.
I'm just hanging out with my best friend, Sebastian.
Ariel.
Terrible.
King Triton is my alter ego that I use to log into porn sites and tip women.
I was going to say, when you're like looking to deepfake pose as a man online, right?
Yes, as I often do.
As you often do.
Catfish, was there a catfish in The Little Mermaid? One of the fishes.
How funny would that be? Just remake it with a catfish, and it's like, how come that one looks like Ariel as well? Okay, so yes, she wisens up. She understands she can't go in with guns blazing. So she uses Mr. Teapot to confirm that, in fact, this Lola doppelganger is real time. Like, she is apparently doing this as they talk because she gets an immediate response when she tips her. So this is not a replay video. Someone has hijacked your account.
And her feed and her room, but like it's not, and it's just like, oh, but yeah. It's the thing where I wonder if this movie come out 2 years later, like after all the deepfake stuff, like was really, really, really prominent, if people would be less bothered by the lack of explanation for this.
Maybe. I'm thinking back to our conversation about It Follows and how people get really hung up on the logistics. I think people they want a certain amount of reassurance specifically around a villain. It's not always about a backstory, but they want to know, okay, what are the rules? How does it work? You know, when Alice sees Baby and Lola going around her house and they're in the same room that she's in online, how does that work? But part of me, again, is just like, it's not that interesting. I guess they just are.
For me, though, the idea of this even happening is fucking terrifying. And so I guess in my mind, I'm like, look, if this was actually
mission accomplished.
To you, well, because if this was actually happening to you, you probably would not figure out exactly what was going on. Like, we're lucky Alice gets as much information as she does out of Tank. Like, that to me is more information than I thought we were going to get.
And I would argue that scene is one of the most sort of, not clunky, because I think it still works, but if you're going to point at the film and say, oh, well, that's a bit narratively convenient, the fact that Tink is there and knows all this stuff, you know, that is more than I expected to get as well.
But it's just a thing where it's like, if this was happening to you, you would be very scared. But because you're watching it happen to someone else, you're just frustrated by the lack of explanation. So I'm just like, maybe try to put yourself in this character's shoes, because this is scary what is happening to her.
Yeah.
Well, and the whole movie is supposed to be about us empathizing with this cam girl, this sex worker. So, put yourself into her shoes for the scary parts, too.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've confirmed Lola is real timing and all of this stuff. So something has happened. Who do we want to blame for this? Well, it was probably that bitch at the cam girl house. So Alice goes, she shows Fox as well as another cam girl named Lucky Duck, who is played by Quay Tan, and she is actively blaming Princess. So when Princess is around, she says, hey, you know, isn't it weird that I've been locked out of my account the day after I was here? And Princess rightfully says, girl, you're reaching. Like, we don't like each other, but I didn't do this. So nice try. Okay. So Alice calls customer service again. I do like that she's just walking around the video store giving no fucks because this is her life. She is a cam girl. She is a sex worker. She needs back into that account because that is how she makes money and she needs this resolved. Let me speak to the manager.
Well, and I think of experiences I've had where apps don't have enough human support.
Oh my God. Every one of them? Yes.
And I'm just shouting operator or representative.
Live human. Live human now.
Yes.
Remember when you used to be able to just press 0 and it would take you right to the person?
Oh
yeah.
God,
and they changed that to trick us and we just have to scream operator until we're blue in the face. But
Agent! Agent!
And I just feel like it's such a relatable experience to be like, there's a problem with my account. Please, someone help me. There's not enough human support. All your dark patterns aren't taking me to where I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but even later when they're like, oh, what's your verification code? And she's like saying it like, oh, that's not correct. And I was like, can I just come to your office? I will fucking fly there with the money I made off of your website. Please I will show up in person.
Like, let me just sit down with my laptop and show you what's happening.
But also, this is the company that takes 50% of her money. What are they doing for her, right?
Yeah.
It's extra frustrating. But I do kind of love that it's this idea that, she's being catfished by some entity look-alike doppelganger thing. But she's also being not catfished, but she's being gaslit by the company that employs her. Because all of a sudden, like, everything is fine until all of a sudden it's not. And then this person is completely useless to you. I mean, Trace, you and I had this issue when literally we were trying to take money out from the Patreon. And I was like, I need to send this money to Trace. And the website that we used was just like, oh, we decided to put a hold on your account. We haven't told you about it until you needed this money. And we were just like, but we need that money to pay our rents.
I had to like they were like, oh, you have to like do submit a letter of your job and like why this person is paying you. And I was like, it's my business.
You don't need
partner.
to know that. Like that. It comes back to the conversation we had earlier where it was like, how is this any of your fucking business? That's my money. And I'm using you and you're taking 4% off the top. How about you just do what I tell you to fucking do?
It was just one of those things where I was like, he's just transferring me money because it's international. He can't use fucking Venmo. We would be using Venmo if this wasn't the case.
Truly that. Yeah. It's the international nature of the podcast that comes back to bite us in the ass like a Vibatron.
All the time, yeah.
Okay. There. See, folks, you now know a little bit more about us. Okay, so Alice is having absolutely no luck with this guy, and she's getting super fucking frustrated. This is when Tink shows up at her mother's hair salon, and she has no time or patience for this, but she can't get him out the door fast enough before her mom sees this guy. And we should note that Tink is there because he said, well, you told me you loved me during the show last night.
Okay, but this is so fucked up because we will learn later he already knows that she's been duplicated. So he knows, but either A, this did not happen, or it did happen, but he knows it was the double and not actually Alice doing this. And he's still going there.
It's the latter.
Yeah, exactly. He's still going there saying, oh, well, you told me you loved me last night. Ugh.
Because remember, when she finally confronts him at the motel and realizes, yes, he knew that this was going to happen to her because he had seen it happen to a bunch of other girls, she accuses him of saying, well, you waited so that you could white knight your way in, because he has deceived himself into thinking that he knows her and also that they're going to be together. Yeah. It's creep on top of scary. So Alice has had it. You know what? Fine, motherfuckers. You won't let me in. I will just start up again. So she tries to reapply to the site, but her ID is already on file. So they got her in the system and they won't let her. So that plan's not going to work.
That's relatable too, by the way.
Yes.
Yep.
Reset your password. You can't use that password again. Like, I was trying that password.
An account with that email address already exists. I know.
Yeah. But guess what? I can't get into that email anymore for one reason or another. Like, why? Oh, because you control all of my information, even though you have it all? I
don't know about y'all, but I get like unreasonably frustrated in those moments. Like I get like very angry, and I'm not an angry person.
I crack my laptop in half.
Yeah.
I was going to say, do we all just slam our laptops closed? So things are escalating online as well because we see that the doppelganger Lola is doing a public in a library.
Oh
my God.
Come on.
I will tell you right now, because I come across quite a bit of public porn when I look for porn, and I almost don't find it like a turn on because I'm so nervous that these people are going to get caught. But I realize that for a lot of people, that's the turn on, that they might get caught. But for me, I find it so anxiety inducing. And then I'm just like, how are you just fucking in this parking lot? No one is seeing you. But I digress.
Yeah. I mean, I think they probably are being seen unless it's an entirely staged sequence. But the reality is that you're going to do it and then you're going to run before you get arrested. But I think for those things, it's just, it hasn't crossed the line into sexual for you. So you're still focused on the anxiety aspect of it.
It will not be sexual for me. Like anytime someone's like, oh, you into public? I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like, no, I am not.
That's interesting though, because I'm very much on the record. Like we've had conversations about things like voyeurism because Ariel, I don't know if you live in like a condo or if you're out in the burbs or something, but like I live in a condo tower, so I can see all of my neighbors a lot of the time. And I've shared several stories about how I get to see my neighbors walking around nude. They have probably seen me do it. It's just something that I feel like you get used to.
Well, no, that's fine because you're in your own apartment or you're looking at someone else in their own apartment. You're not in a public space where you can get arrested for the acts that you are doing.
Yeah. But it's
I do
the danger,
think there's
right?
a difference. I think there's a difference there.
Yeah.
I guess for me, part of this is, I mean, it's issues of control, obviously, but I think it lends itself to the side of the conversation that we've been having around the sexualized nature of the violence, right? It's like what gets people off. It's the danger of it.
And to be clear, I'm not shaming anyone who's really into public play. I like, by all means, I get why
it's just
people
not your
are into
thing.
it. It is. I get way too anxious thinking about it that I do not find it a turn on in any shape, way, or form.
Yeah. Well, we should note that this is partially working, I think, for the shitty teenage boys who are at Jordan's birthday party, because that is who is watching this public library performance. And of course, they use this as an opportunity to shame him publicly. All we wanted to do was have a little bit of fucking cake.
And I appreciate Jordan like beating the fuck out of this kid. Well, not really. He just hits him, but still. But it's just devastating for her because it's a thing where it's like, she's proud of the work she's doing, but it's more so she knows what everyone else is thinking about her, and that's like the not cognitive dissonance, I guess, but just like the disconnect there for me, where I'm just like, oh, it must be so horrible to be so proud of the work you're doing, but be in a situation like this where you feel so ashamed of it at the same time.
And she lost the control over the rollout of that information. Like,
right.
She really wanted to control how and when and the explanation. And then that was just completely blown up.
You know, I'm so appreciative that you just said that, because I was about to pose the question, well, why is she ashamed in this moment? Because she does seem uncomfortable with the uncomfortable silence that results, right? When everybody is just standing there staring at her and then no one even acknowledges it, right? Oh, let's just get the cake. And she runs away. But that totally makes sense. It's not that she's ashamed of the work she's doing. It's that she doesn't have the control to decide who knows and when, right? That's what she wanted to do. She wanted to control the narrative of when her mother found out because the time wasn't right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she wanted, she probably wouldn't have introduced her mom to her work by saying, here, look at this on a phone.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's the thing. I wouldn't be showing my parents the work, period. But, like, if they want to go look at it, that's their prerogative, as we'll get with the mother in this movie. But, yeah. But that's the thing, though, is we'll learn from the mother later, like, the person that Alice is on camera is not night and day different from who she is as a person, like as Alice, but like she's more confident and assured on camera than she is in person. So it's like you watch the scene and you want her to be like, yes, this is what I do. Fuck it. Like, what do you say about it? But she's not Lola right now. She's Alice.
Yep.
Right. I love one of the visual signifiers that the movie, again, doesn't really hit us over the head with, but you can track it throughout the course of the film, is that Alice bites her nails. Mm-hmm. And that's something that her mom wants her to stop doing. But when we see her on camera, she is so completely in control. She's competent, she's sexy, and we never see her bite her nails or do any of that kind of stuff.
You're going to laugh at me. And listeners, you'll probably laugh at me for this too, because we always make those Chekhov's jokes. But I did write Chekhov's nail biting in my notes, and it never came back.
Yeah, I think the telling guys that you love them is more of the prominent one, because it comes back with Tink. But even here in the moment when she gets outed at the birthday party, we actually hear her, like Lola's voice on the phone before it gets shut off, where she says, "I love you all."
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. She says, "I love each and every one of you," which is something that our Alice would never do as Lola.
Yeah.
Okay, so Alice is spiraling after this. We are compulsively watching Lola, who has now climbed up to 31, and she's using her Mr. Teapot alias to tip Lola in order to encourage her to hit herself increasingly harder.
Is this a flog? Is that what we call this tool?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we have multiple instruments here. I'm sure that people who are into a little bit of kink would say, no, it's more than just that. But yeah, she gets to hit herself a little bit. I like that Alice recognizes enough to say, you're not even doing it hard enough. Like, hit yourself harder.
Oh, Cat o' Nine Tails, by the way. Cat o' Nine Tails.
There we go.
Yes,
there we go.
yes.
So, yeah, we move up the food chain of different things to hit ourselves on the backside with, and then out of the tickle trunk comes a gun. And I think this is another incredibly confronting moment. I'd be curious to know if it doesn't hit as hard for other folks, but the idea of seeing yourself stage a suicide when you didn't plan it, right? Like, that's the difference between the opening scene and this moment where we watch Lola blow her brains out and Alice has a complete fucking meltdown.
Yeah, I think it would break my brain. I can't think of anything more horrifying.
No.
Gets to the top 20, though.
It does get her to the top 20. Yeah. I guess the silver lining of all of this. But I think even that would be the most frustrating thing for Alice, right? Think of all the hard work she put in, and then she's seeing somebody else get the credit and the payoff for it.
You know what? Okay, my question actually would be this. Is she still getting the money that Lola is making for her?
It's a good question.
It is a good question.
I will confess, I know that's not the point of the story, but a part of me is kind of like, honestly, that's great. Free money. I can do whatever the fuck I want now.
So at the point it like changes her password, I would assume it changed her payment details.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was what I default assumed as well, because I think that's part of the reason why she's so desperate to recover it. It's not just about her public image and so on, but I think it's also, well, this is my fucking livelihood. This is my job. This is my new house.
And I guess that's where if you're really looking for an explanation, it could be like, okay, well, it's the company like that's taking 50% of your profits. Once you reach a certain point, they duplicate you and boom, they take 100% of the profits instead of 50%. But...
Well, I'm curious, okay, because we're moving into the back part of the film where we're starting to do research on Baby. So, we meet up with Barney so that we can pump him for information at the very uncomfortable Mexican restaurant. But, did you get the impression that all of the other girls, in addition to Baby, had died under suspicious circumstances, or they had been sort of taken care of? Is that part of the mythology, or is Baby a one-off case in your minds?
I wasn't sure. When they're at the uncomfortable Mexican restaurant date, Barney mentions he had a date with another girl who never showed up. Right. And so I was kind of like, was that something? Was that a girl who went missing or died mysteriously? But Alice only really looks into Baby, so we don't ever know for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I read it as, a one-off, just a coincidence. We will learn from Tank that other girls have been duplicated, but I guess I was kind of in the thing where I was like, well, maybe though they're not as smart as Alice and they just had to stop because they couldn't do anything about it.
I guess I also, not to totally take us away from this onto a different tangent, but I sort of love the backhanded critique of Mazzei saying, oh, well, when you see these lazy fucking cam girls who aren't really doing anything particularly innovative, it's because they probably got copied.
Yeah.
It's like the real ones are doing the work.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, it's the AI version. Yeah, it's the bare bones minimum effort.
The AI, the cam sequel, where you just become an AI cam girl model.
Honestly.
I would walk into the sea. I just can't. I can't.
Let's not pretend that it's not there. I have seen ads where it's like, hey, like, why would you masturbate alone when you could jack off to an AI guy?
Oh my God.
And I was like, what the fuck is this shit?
That's fucking dystopian.
And that's another thing too, where I'm like, okay, but that similar to my aversion to like getting into like violent porn, where I'm like, well, I don't want to get into that either, because what if I get too like reliant on that? Then like I can't like form a connection with a real human being, you know?
Oh my God. All I can think of is, let me see if I can get a hard on what I think about boiling, parts of the ocean just so that I can come. Fuck off.
Okay, I'll be quick with it. There was a movie that Jason Reitman did like 10 years ago called Men, Women, and Children, and no one liked it. I did like it, even though it's very
confronting.
Yeah, but it's very much about like teens and sexuality. But it's like an all-star cast, and I really like it, but no one else does. Anyway, but one of the Adam Sandler's kid in it, he watches like violent porn, and when he when he tries to lose his virginity with his girlfriend, he can't, because he can only get hard from the violent porn, because that's what he's weaned himself on.
Wasn't that one of the criticisms of the film, is that it was so kind of causality oriented, like, oh, well, if you do this, you're probably going to end up killing someone in a car accident or blah, blah. It was very, I wish I was Magnolia, but a very surface level aesthetic.
It is very surface level, and it's very much like Internet is Bad, the movie, and it takes like 2 hours to tell the story. But again, it's all vignettes, because it's like Jennifer Garner, and like she's an overprotective mom, and Caitlin Dever, and like Judy Greer's one of the moms in it who
it's the best cast.
It's a great cast, but yeah, it just no one liked that movie, and I was kind of shocked because I liked it. But anyway, so that was my point. I always think about Adam Sandler's kid in that movie not being able to get hard with his girlfriend because he's too used to violent porn.
Yeah. Ugh. Also, that sounds like something that Mike White would use on a season of White Lotus.
Well, I mean, shit, we're getting gay incest on White Lotus, I think, this year, so we're going to find out.
100%, yes. By the time this comes out, I guarantee it will already have been confirmed. Let's come back to the film. I realized that we jumped over the scene where Alice calls the cops.
Ooh,
and
God.
I think we could say, oh, this is so obvious because we know where it's going to go. But I like that we have two of them. One of them who just leaves in the middle of this interview and then comes back to say, well, maybe you shouldn't be on the internet. And then we've got the other guy who is basically propositioning her because he's confusing camgirling with full-on prostitution.
This scene made me angrier than anything else in the film. I was just disgusted. Like, yeah, they probably can't do anything to help her in this situation, but they are just so... They're both dismissive and, like, also too close.
But it's like misogyny as well as, like, condemnation. But
yes.
I guess I love that the one guy is like, well, I can't do anything to help you, and frankly, I'm disgusted, but also, I might be interested in fucking you.
Right.
This scene, to me, like, just represents the American attitudes towards sex work, like, in two characters. Like, that is what this scene is. And yes, Joe, you can say it's obvious, but I can guarantee you that a lot of sex workers have interactions like this.
Oh, God, yes.
Daily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, like the idea of women not reporting things to police around like sex and sex work already high on the list. And then this idea that, of course, like they're going to try to take advantage of that as make it an opportunity for them. Ugh. Yeah.
And then she, her physical safety is in jeopardy. Nothing happens with it, but she's alone in her house with a cop who all of a sudden has decided, maybe he wants to get with her.
Mm-hmm. And the other guy's left.
Yeah, she's completely vulnerable and exposed and at the mercy of this guy with a bunch of power.
Which at that point, I mean, I get it. Like, maybe it's not the top of her mind, but at that point, I'm like, can I have your badge number, please?
Right.
Right?
No,
yeah.
I wouldn't think of it. I'd probably be too scared.
Yeah. Ugh. So many levels of discomfort. I love this as a contrast to the kind of quiet, judgmental, but like non-reaction that she got at the party, where people are clearly just going to gossip about this shit. And, you know, we see a scene later on where people have graffitied Lynn's house because instead of, you know, maybe just saying, oh, so you do sex work. What does that entail? How does that make you money? And so on. No, these people would rather not say anything to her face and then just spray paint her mom's house.
That made me so sad.
And it says whorehouse on it. Like, it's not even original.
No.
True.
Yeah. Okay. So around this time, we have learned that baby is actually dead. And we see, you know, funeral notices and that kind of stuff. So things are going weird. This is also around the time where we see that baby and Lola are doing their collab together, but they're in Alice's house. And this part really freaked me out the first time. Not so because they're going through rooms where she is, but just the fact that even on the audio for the movie, we can hear them, and you're not certain if she's hearing it in real time or if she's just hearing it on the laptop. Mm-hmm. And I love this sequence where she explores and we look into rooms, but they're empty, but we can see people in them on the computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it's so good.
It's really scary.
Is it scary or is it frustrating?
I think it's scary.
Like,
no, I know. It's
Trace is just being a troll.
I'm being a troll, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, let's talk about the scene with her mom, because, yeah, this is when she comes over to her mom's house, discovers the graffiti, and her mom admits, I watched your show. And I think for any creative person, this is a moment of sheer panic.
Yes.
Where you think, oh, which show and for how long and what did you think? But also don't tell me because, ew.
Yeah, when my mom told me she was started listening to the show, I was like, did you start at the beginning? Maybe you shouldn't.
Shout out to my mom, who's definitely listening to this episode.
Oh, hey. I was wondering why you weren't sharing any of the fun, saucy parts. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe because you're like, I'm here in a virtual chat room with two weird men. Maybe I'm not comfortable.
No, it's not you guys. It's 100% that my mom listens to my podcast episodes. Hi, Mom.
That's fine. My mom has the option to turn things off or skip forward if she wants to. So
there we go.
My mom could handle it. She was a hippie. I'm protecting her.
I get that.
You know what I mean? Whatever.
Yeah, you know what? You're maintaining the professional daughter relationship, right?
Sure.
It's like the two don't have to cross.
But to bring it back to the film, though, I will say the first time I saw this, I was like, what? Like,
yeah.
I cannot
Well, because
imagine.
we don't know how it's going to go, right? Like, initially I thought, oh, God, she's going to come down on her. This is going to be so judgy. This is going to be really uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to see their relationship fracture because of this. And I was delighted at the way it goes instead.
Oh, I love the way it's handled. I'm just thinking, in general, a parent watching their child engage in sexual activity.
Yeah.
Like that is where I was kind of like, what the fuck are we doing here? Again, I like the way it's handled, and granted, it's not necessarily like she's having sex in the scenes, you know, like she's alone. But I was flabbergasted by this the first time I saw it.
It's interesting, if only because one of the things that Lynn does is she praises her daughter because she's so much better. She's very polished. She's confident and all this kind of stuff. And unfortunately for Alice, she can't even hear those compliments because she realizes that her mom probably watched Lola and not her. And she's not getting that validation. Like, that isn't her work. So her mom is praising the doppelganger who has taken over her life.
I wasn't even thinking about that. Fuck.
Yeah, that made me super sad. I was like, oh man, she's really missed. Like, everything she wanted to do about telling her mom about her work has been just utterly taken from her.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Lynn thinks, oh, well, she's actually ashamed, or she thinks that I can't handle it, or she's not ready. I mean, I think she even says, like, take responsibility for what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And there is that miscommunication that is unfortunate, but I think we understand that at least her mom isn't saying, oh, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing with your life? She's not critiquing her in that way. She actually wants her daughter to be proud of her. And of course, we'll get that nice full circle moment near the end of the film. Okay, so this is where we discover that all of the joint shows that Baby does, there's something off about them. And we realize that the thing in common is that Tink is the top fan of all of these women. So we confront him at the motel. And I love the way that this scene plays out, too, because it could have gone very conventional, very expected. You know, he reveals, something weird is going on, exposition.
Right.
And we kind of get to a point of detente where we think, okay, we've resolved some of these issues. And then she wakes up to him masturbating to a private chat with whatever the fuck this thing is.
Oh my God. And he's saying, I was doing it for research or something like that. And I was like, okay.
Buddy, you earned the tasing you get in this scene.
Yeah.
But he does say, though, it's on all of the campsites, not just the one you're on.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I was going to kind of bring up a thing I've been really waiting to talk about, which is I wanted to talk about tulpas.
Ooh. Okay. Explain.
There's a ghost, right?
A tulpa is a thought form. So I have a definition I can read for us if
Please
we're
do.
at that point. Okay. So this point in the movie where she's talking with Tink in the hotel room and she interacts with her persona on camera and she realizes it doesn't know what it looks like.
Yes.
So a deep fake is like a really good explanation for what's going on in this film, but I think it's supernatural because at that point, nobody in the cabal of whoever's running the dark web goes, oh God, I'm interacting with someone who looks like me. I need to shut it down or whatever. So this is from Wikipedia. In Tibetan Buddhism and later traditions of mysticism and the paranormal, a tulpa is a materialized being or thought form, typically in human form, that is created through spiritual practice and intense concentration. The idea became an important belief in theosophy. Spiritualist Alexandra David Neal stated that she had observed Buddhist tulpa creation and practices in 20th century Tibet. She described tulpas as magic formations generated by a powerful concentration of thought. David Neal believed that a tulpa could develop a mind of its own. Once the tulpa is endowed with enough vitality to be capable of playing the part of a real being, it tends to free itself from its maker's control. According to David Neal, this happens nearly mechanically, just as the child, when her body is completed and able to live apart, leaves its mother's womb. So what I think happened is that night with the Vibratron, when she hit 47, there was enough parasocial concentration on her persona that they accidentally created the tulpa. And I think that keeps happening to these girls who rank highly because there's so much concentration on their persona. They're creating thought forms.
That I love that. I had to, because I was like, I've heard that term before. Where have I heard that before? It's because it's the Empty Man. Like, that's the plot of the Empty Man.
Yeah, it's in the Empty Man, yeah.
Well, I've also heard a lot of people speculate that what's happening in Yellow Jackets is some kind of tulpa, where the girls are manifesting something in the wilderness and it becomes reality.
Ooh,
like, you could say it's a paranoid, like a shared paranoid delusion or something like that as well. But I think tulpas are fascinating and terrifying. Like, to me, they're adjacent to things like a Golem or even like a Frankenstein's monster.
To me, I mean, maybe it's not cosmic horror per se, but it kind of just enters that realm of cosmic horror where it's just something that's so, like, the unknown factor of it is just terrifying to me. And, like, the power it could have based on thoughts. Like, how do you control that, you know?
Yeah. And especially, like, you know, in the United States, with all of the like powerful belief happening in the face of reality and people believing things that aren't true, even though reality's in their face. Tulpas are really scary to me because I'm like, what are we bringing into existence just by our sheer, you know, force of thought at this cult of personality?
All right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it in this movie potentially with celebrity. I'm using dick fingers or air quotes of like cam girls.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a Patrick from Kill by Kill reference.
Oh, okay. I was like, what?
But yeah, I mean, like, all of the attention is focused on cam girls, but there's also no suggestion that if it's not just on this cam site, it could be on the other porn sites. That also means it could be in other facets of other internet forums, right?
All
so,
parasocial
like,
relationships, you know?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So basically, people are pod people all over the internet.
Yes.
Oh, God.
And we're back to deepfakes and AI. Okay, so this scene comes to the startling conclusion when Alice realizes that Lola doesn't recognize her. She just thinks that Alice is Tink's girlfriend, but this gives Alice enough information that she thinks, okay, now I've got a plan, and I think I can beat this. So she rushes home. We now do see that Lola is number 10 on the leaderboard, so she is climbing quickly. But we watch as Alice reconfigures her setup so that her TV is mirroring her laptop, and then she asks Lola as Teapot if they can go for a private. And then when we're in the private, we say, well, actually, we look so good together. Why don't we show everybody how great we are? So we take the private public, and then all of a sudden, the whole room goes wild. Wait, 2 Lolas? What's going on here?
Yeah, and they're like asking, like, oh my God, is this computer effects? Like, what wizardry?
Yeah. Which is fair, right? Because we have seen the overt theatricality that Lola and Alice will go to. Like, we have seen fake suicides. We have seen all of the different costumes and so on. So I love that there's enough that they might say, oh, well, she's just really fucking good at this. So I'm willing to believe, yeah, she's found a way to clone herself, or she's got an identical twin. Okay. That guy's an idiot, but... So Alice proposes a game of monkey see, monkey do to determine who is the best Lola. So we will mirror each other because this is a doppelganger film after all. And Lola wins the first round by a landslide, in part because it relies on Alice being able to convincingly say that she loves you guys. And this is one of the rules that she will never break. So she doesn't do it well. And then Lola wins. So Alice has to take off her clothes. So that's round 1. And then Alice gets her on the next round because she's going to bash her fucking face in on this vanity.
I've never actually tried to do this, by the way, but like,
No.
I don't think I could do this. Like,
no.
I would pull back at the last second. I mean, I would, my nose would make contact with the desk, but it would not be with any force.
You would pull yourself back because it's like forcing yourself to drown or something. My body would say no.
But I think that's where it ties into the Black Swan and Whiplash of it all, you know, where it's like she will do anything, including this horrific I mean, I get it's quote unquote just a nose breaking, but the makeup work on her nose looks so good.
It's so good.
Oh, it would hurt so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh boy. And I have such a big fucking nose too. That thing is just going to go. So she bashes herself in, which means that Lola has to duplicate it. So she does, but one of the things we haven't really talked about is that in certain key moments and certain interactions, when we've been watching Lola and to a lesser extent Baby, we see that there's a bit of a glitch in the feed. And we see it here where when Lola brings her head up from the vanity, it's almost like she held back Trace. There's no blood. But then when she sees, as a tulpa, I need to mirror my original thing, she then produces the right carnal damage on her face. So this is how we're going to win. So we just have to beat her because it's not convincing anymore. So we do this a second time.
Ugh.
And it's really bad. But ultimately, Alice does end up getting the win. So her prize is that she wants Lola's password for the account.
I'm going to tell y'all, she is smart. I
smart.
never would have come up with this plan.
Me either.
to do it.
It's so good.
No. Yeah, it's very brazen, but, you know, she's fucking good at her job, and we have seen her plan and plot, usually just her show, but here, this is the way that she gets back to what is hers. So I do love that Lola tries to protest. So this thing is smart enough to know, if I want to remain in control, I need to not give this. But a deal is a deal. The room starts.
Well, she tells her, you have to do it because how are your viewers ever going to trust you again if you don't do it?
Yeah. Building on that parasocial community, right, Ariel?
Yes.
So, we should also note that Alice encourages the men to stop tipping her. So she starts to drop ranks. And that's also very important to Lola. So we end up finally getting the information. Alice logs on. Did you think when she hovers over this delete account, this action cannot be undone? Did you at any point think, maybe she won't do it?
Do you mean, did I think we were going to get a Substance moment where she's like, I can't, I need you? Yes, I absolutely thought that.
I don't remember if I did or not. I was just so on board for whatever she was doing because I thought it was so smart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love, this is our climax of the film, right? And it's bloody, but it's not a showdown between the two women in the way that we would conventionally think it could be staged. I like that it's cerebral and it's using all of these reflective surfaces because, this is a huge part of the theme that we're talking about this month. I just think it's very, very clever. And to me, it's incredibly satisfying.
Yes.
Okay, so ultimately she does say delete account and everything just goes black.
Oh, I wrote in my notes in all caps, fuck yes, go girl.
Well, I do love this moment. This isn't the end and we just, fade to black and then we pick back up with her. We'll get there, but there is this additional moment where we see Alice and she's somewhere between sobbing and laughing in the aftermath of this. And it's really hard to discern, is she happy or is she actually really upset because she just destroyed all of the work that she did?
Yeah.
I view this as relief.
She's finally back in control. She's got her life. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I think you definitely lean that way, but she is still crying. I think she understands the magnitude of, okay, my empire is gone.
I think she's crying because she's got a busted ass nose.
Well, there's that too.
That too.
But I agree. Trust me. As someone, Joe, you saw me when I was like, I don't want to give up my Twitter. I've worked up a decade to build up that shit.
Yeah.
And I still haven't given it up, but I'm also not on there anymore. So, it's, once you accept it, it becomes much easier.
It's part of the steps, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we catch up with Alice sometime later. Enough time has passed that she can remove the bandages. You can tell her face is still a tiny little bit fucked up, so she's not quite there.
But that makeup job is good.
Mm-hmm. So she's getting her hair done by her mom, Lynn, who asks if she still wants to do this. Okay, I'm helping you, I'm supporting you, and you're telling me that you will do it as often or as many times as it takes. If you have to delete the account and start it up again because this happens again, she will do it. And I love that, right? It's not, oh, this experience soured me, I'm not going to be a cam girl anymore. It's Alice saying, I'm really fucking good at this and I will continue to do whatever it takes to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So good. So yeah, we throw on a very unconvincing blonde wig. And I'm not going to lie. If folks have seen the short Pruning that Madeline Brewer is in from 2022, that one's a little bit more ham-fisted, but it is on Alter if you want to go and check it out. It's political, heavily political, but I would say it's worth checking out because it's another nice showcase for her. But it looks like the exact same blonde wig.
Oh, maybe she kept it.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. But the movie ends with her starting up this new count. I love that she had to get a fake fucking ID for this because her ID was in the system still. So,
which also shows how easy it is to fake your ID on one of these sites.
Yeah. And do we like the joke that her new name is Eve Bot? Because she's a bot and she's the first woman.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was like, what's the joke?
We'll tell you offline. Yeah, and then it's the countdown from 10 as she psychs herself up. And then, of course, the film just ends with her going, hey, guys.
And she's all the way at the bottom of the rank again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which, like, 170-something thousand, which I'm also like, wow, that's a lot of cam girls.
Right.
Actually, I'm willing to bet that that's a conservative number. I'm willing to bet that there's probably more. This is just the one site, right?
Right.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's all the cam girls in the world. Absolutely. But to the point where I was like, girl, you should have been happy with top 50.
Right.
Like, that's pretty good.
Like, yeah, you done good. Actually, I just realized we're coming to the end of this, and obviously Black Swan is in conversation with this movie as well, but this also reminds me of Perfect Blue, right? Because it's about a woman who's ambitious, making things happen for herself in the entertainment industry.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a story about ambition, for sure. And, like, it not being settled, not being good enough until you're at the top of your game.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the reasons that I like these movies so much, I'm not sure if people have caught on what one of the other common factors is, these are all stories about women. Like, I think that this movie plays incredibly differently if it is a man. Like, maybe it would be interesting and different, but I just don't think you can tell it the same way.
No, but would I watch a movie about a male cam boy? Absolutely.
Oh, sure. But that's Cam. That's the movie.
That is Cam. And Ariel, first, thank you so much for coming on to this. But do you have any...
thanks for having me.
Of course. But do you have any final thoughts on Cam before we sign off?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we covered it.
Yeah, I've said my piece on this, but again, everyone, if you have not seen this movie, big recommend. Please, it's on Netflix. Go watch it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very accessible, but also, can we please get a physical media release of this movie?
Real.
What I really want, actually, is not to always come back to Showgirls, but I was just thinking about, we're recording this the week that The Monkey gets released, and they're doing a social media ad campaign where morticians watch The Monkey with Oz Perkins. I would love, like, a cam girl or a sex worker heavy physical media release of this, or at least some kind of, like, cam girls watch Cam and, like, do an audio commentary on it.
I mean, it's not going to be on the Blu-ray, I don't think, but that's what they did with Nora. They did a sex worker only screening of Nora.
Yes.
And, like, at the end, instead of clapping their hands, they were all clapping their heels together.
That's great.
Yeah. But agreed. Unfortunately, I mean, you mentioned Hush earlier, and I think Mike Flanagan jumped through a lot of hoops to get the rights to that back.
Yeah, I think he had to leave Netflix, so because that seemed to happen coincidentally right when he went to Amazon.
Yeah. So I mean, again, we can hope, but who knows?
Yeah.
But, okay, everyone. Well, before we announce what we're covering next week, Ariel, oh my god. Almost.
Right at the end.
All right, well, before we announce what we're covering next week, Ariel, where can people find you on social media? Oh, if you're that active, you said you weren't.
Well, you know, I'm not like, I'm on there. You can find me. I'm on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Ari_Hellraiser. And I post all of my writing and podcasting there. I would say I'm most active on Blue Sky, so follow me there.
And then, what about your book, by the way? Is it available pretty much anywhere books are sold?
Yes. So if you want to check out Millennial Nasties, all about my perspective on 2000s horror, you can get that at encyclopocalypse.com or pretty much anywhere books are sold. And if you don't want to purchase a copy of it, ask your public library to carry it.
Yes. Just don't do that while you're filming a public.
Right. Or do, and that's the crossover event that we need.
There we go.
I do just want to say, I didn't know you had written this book until I was, making your intro, and I was like, oh my god, like, you are speaking to my soul. Like, an academic look at 2000s horror films? Fuck yes! Like, that's my bread and butter.
Thank you.
Oh, Trace, there's a whole thing in there about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake.
Yes!
Yes, there is. There is. And, 2000s horror needs more love than it gets. I feel like it's getting more and more. People are coming around to it and saying it out loud.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my first book on 2000s horror, which implies future books on 2000s horror. So we'll see.
Yes,
a little taster. Okay,
keep us updated. But yeah, if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Blue Sky and Instagram at HorrorQueers. Shoot us an email at horrorqueers@gmail.com. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered. If you want to chat with other listeners, please join our Facebook Horror Queers group or our brand new Horror Queers Discord that we have created. We're learning the ropes, but it's actually I like it more than Facebook, so there you go.
Indeed, yes. And actually, I realized we shouted this out for 2 weeks in a row now, but I did want to give credit to listener Evan because he has been instrumental in getting this up off the ground. So honestly, it's a lot of work from him, and then we're just going to take the credit for it.
Well, but we're not taking the credit for it now because Evan, thank you. Joe is correct.
Here's the thing: we'll be the Lolas, and he can be the Alice.
There you go.
Okay,
it writes itself.
That does not imply that we're going to be nude on the Discord, by the way.
No,
what are we doing
not.
here?
No.
I mean, I'll make some offers, and Joe won't, but make me some offers, and I'll see.
Oh my God!
I'll add that channel to it. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you want even more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. If you subscribe today, you will get 370 hours of Patreon content, including this month's new episodes on Borderline, Oddity, Opus, Death of a Unicorn, and a brand new audio commentary on Sin City for its 20th anniversary.
Jesus Christ.
I saw this in theaters. Why is it 20 years old? But Joe.
Yes.
Week 3 of Doppelgängers next week. What are we talking about?
Well, we're going to talk about a man for a change. Yeah. So we're also talking about a film that I have never seen.
I can tell because you said it's about a man.
You know what? I only know Donald Sutherland with his mouth open and he's pointing at something off camera.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about the Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake from the 70s.
Yeah, this is...
Oh my goodness.
Shockingly, Joe, I saw this for the first time last year because it was a pre-programmed... It was the first Terror Tuesday Denver did, and it was pre-programmed, so I had to go watch it and go intro it.
Oh, wow.
Great movie. Has one of the most unsettling character deaths I've ever seen.
Okay. Well, don't threaten me with a good time.
But until next week, everyone, we can cross out Cam.
Indeed. And cross out Horror Queers.